The South Carolina legislative session has officially wrapped, and here to help break down what it all means for businesses and families alike is Krystel Reid Heath, Chief Strategist and CEO of Capital Consulting Strategies. Glad to have you back with us.
Nice to be with you.
All right, so we have talked about the changes to the taxes and how this is going to impact businesses, families. A lot of people aren't as thrilled with some of those changes. Some of them are maybe little improvements, but maybe you can kind of give us an overview of what is to be expected. Let's start with businesses, because South Carolina is a home to a lot of small businesses.
Sure, there are some wins and there are some opportunities for growth for businesses as well. So some of the child care tax credits were expanded. So if you're an employer and you offer child care, then that's an opportunity there as well to provide that for your workers. If you are an independent contractor or an employee and you receive overtime compensation, or if you receive tips, then those additional earnings are exempt as well. If you're a business, that's important to understand those regulations to make sure that your tax professional or that your HR person is doing the appropriate withholdings to make sure. So now's a great time to look at your operations, making sure that you're in compliance with the new regulations.
Yeah, you don't want to give anybody the short shrift when it comes to tips. That's something that a lot of people are really banking on. So that does have a significant impact on businesses and how they handle their end of things.
It does, and so this is something that we do for Capital Consulting. Hopefully every business has a business plan or a strategic plan, and so it's helpful at a minimum that you look at that annually. I prefer looking at it quarterly to understand what were my objectives to date for the quarter. If I'm on target to meet those objectives, great. I look at my strategy if I'm not, and I adjust what's not working. So now's a great time to do a mid-year cleanup of your books to make sure you understand your operating procedures. Make sure that if something's not working with you in your business, to restructure that appropriately. Now's a great time to talk to your tax professional. Don't wait until these new tax regulations take effect to be able to understand the implications. Be proactive and understand your books and make sure that you're leading by numbers first.
And remind us when it takes effect?
So the bill was passed, the HR 1 was passed just a few weeks ago, but some of the implementation for the new tax regulations will take effect the 2026 tax year.
Oh, okay.
So when you go to file your taxes, the new additional tax credits, the withholdings, those things will take place when you file your taxes.
All right, so let's dive into strategy, because that is your wheelhouse. So when we're talking about strategy as these new rules and laws are rolled out, what is the first step that people need to take?
You always want to understand your profitability. So with particular emphasis to these new regulations, so make sure that when these new regulations hit, if you're looking at offering additional tax incentives to your employees or additional bonus, make sure that you can afford to do that. Secondly, look at your standard operating procedures. Ideally, you would have standardized how you operate and how you do business. If not, now's a great time to work with a professional to be able to help you do that so that you can standardize some of your processes. The third thing I would recommend, and I can't underscore this enough, is really talking to a tax professional to help you understand more closely these new regulations. They have implications for the amount of exemptions you can file on business deductions, how much tax credits you're eligible for, whether or not you get additional tax credits for child care. So you want to make sure that you're maximizing those tax credits, and really a CPA or a tax professional can help you understand that. And then,
if I may just jump in, because
sure.
I'm so glad though that you did mention talking to a tax professional. It's one thing to do your taxes on your own. There's so many different platforms in which the process is streamlined and made easy. However, if you get things wrong, that is the fastest way to get an audit. And we want to avoid getting audited.
Absolutely. And one way is, again, to be proactive. So at a minimum, look at your strategic plan quarterly. And in your strategic plan, you should be going over your finances, your operations, your business verticals, or your service delivery processes. So if you're doing it quarterly, when it comes time to pay your taxes, you're not caught off guard by how much money you owe. You should know very closely how much you owe, and ideally you're paying your taxes quarterly depending on your business structure, but you don't want a tax bill or a surprise at the end of the year.
Those are the worst. Those are the worst surprises.
Pay Uncle Sam his fair share.
Yes, indeed. And finally, I did want to touch on the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This was created out of 2008, out of the Great Recession. And there are different camps of thought behind it. I know I've got my own. So what if someone has a significant gripe or an issue with a financial institution?
Sure. If I may preface my comments by saying an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So we want to make sure that we're doing business with reputable businesses. A great place to start is look at your local chambers of commerce, look at the Better Business Bureau, do business with reputable businesses. However, if you do have an issue with your financial institution, you can start with the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs. That's a separate regulatory agency that's funded by state dollars, that's not impacted by CFPB. However, your financial institution probably is FDIC regulated, so that's a federal issue, but it's okay to start at the state level, and they can help you navigate that process and differentiate whether that's something within their jurisdiction or whether that needs to be escalated to the federal level. If it does, and I want to be clear to our viewers that the CFPB is not gone currently, it's just scaled back, so just 6% of their operating budget is left. Very thin skeleton crew, but they still have an obligation to address any issues, so still follow the process.
Krystel Reid Heath, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you sharing your expertise. We'll be back after this.